Hi there, Michelle here. In today's video, I'm going to go ahead and take another look at the what I'm calling the Let's Talk series. And the last one I discussed lighting and what lighting is like for Hoyas in nature. And today I'm going to talk about watering. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the background of Hoyas and why the conditions Hoyas come from influence how we water at home and how we can use those conditions with our home environments to go ahead and make the Hoya grow successfully in our conditions for a long period of time, even if those conditions aren't what the Hoyas naturally grow in. If you'd like to see other plant-related content from me, please consider subscribing to my channel. Not only would you receive notifications about my plant-related content, specifically Hoya-related content, but you would help me spread the word about my Hoya channel to the other reaches of plant YouTube. If you would like to add to the conversation, please write something in the comment section below. I do like to interact with my comment section, so I will get back to you. And so now on with the first part of our Hoya video. I'm going to go ahead and start with a little bit of a brief overview of Hoyas. They were first discovered in the early 1800s by Scottish botanist Robert Brown. He named them after his friend and fellow botanist Thomas Hoy. He was a famous botanist in an area of Western Australia that I cannot pronounce, so I won't even try. But the Hoya craze grew in the 1970s. It seemed like every house had a Hoya carnosa. That was just kind of the epitome of the Hoya craze. But now in the 90s and 2000s and now the 2020s, we are bringing in more and more and more Hoyas. Now it's up to about 500 to 600 Hoyas that have been discovered so far. And there really is no limit to how many more have yet to be discovered. We're now discovering related to Hoyas, the Papua Hoyas. The Hoya genus is spreading. So there's always going to be a Hoya out there for Hoya collectors to collect. What we're going to talk specifically about in today's video is watering, and most specifically about the myth that Hoyas don't need watering, or the myth that you can just never water a Hoya, which is really, I will say the official answer to that question is maybe. But the real answer to that question is not really. But we'll address that in a little bit. So what I'm going to do is we're going to talk about Hoyas today, and we're going to go ahead and repot some Hoyas as I do this. So I have this Hoya Mathilde that has root rot. I know it has root rot. I know it has root rot by all of these yellow leaves that it keeps producing. It's in pon. It's straggling in pon. It's got rotted. Look at these roots that just pull off. So this is a project that needs to get taken care of, and we're going to take care of it today. But since the roots are already really bad, I'm going to see whether I want to put it in organic mix or do I want to put it still in pon. We have Mathilde Splash probably has root rot too. Haven't touched it in like 3 years. We have lacunosa leopard skin, which needs a actual, actual pot. And this stem has got to get something done with it. I'm not really sure if it's going to grow leaves, but we'll make a trellis for it or something to see if it's gonna grow leaves. We have a plant that needs to get out of a pond really bad, and that is the endauensis. I think this is the endauensis. This is the easier cousin of the Kayakamara. I'm going to put it on the bottom of the screen. So this needs to be repotted into something larger. And I have something that has absolutely nothing to do with Hoyas, and that is an Anthurium veitchii. So this looks really sad. It has all these roots are rotted. So we're going to take care of that too. So we're going to take care of those Hoyas as we talk about watering. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this Mathilde off of its trellis. Now, a little bit of background of Hoyas. Where they come from directly influences what kind of watering they need. And that's because, this whole thing is just falling off. That's because Hoyas are grown in most of Southern Asia, including Thailand, the Philippines, India, Malaysia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, New Guinea, and even in some parts of Australia, mainly Western Australia. These locations are generally very humid. They receive frequent moisture. Good Lord. How many? Oh my God. Leaves are just falling off. Oh my God. This whole thing is just, the leaves are just popping right off. Like it's dead. Probably is dead. I may have to just take cuttings of this. I don't know if they're broke, if that's why they're all falling off, or if they're just really just sketchy. They're normally grown in a very warm, very humid place where it rains almost every day. That's why they love humidity. Hoyas also grow in cooler climates. In the mountainous ranges, the thing to keep in mind there is that there is no real protection from the sun's UV light. They generally have more ability to withstand the sun's intense UV light. So that's one thing to keep in mind for Hoyas that grow on mountainous ranges. They are able to take a little bit more light. The thing to keep in mind is Hoyas bloom. All of them have the capability to bloom. That's how one of the ways they reproduce. Well, that is the way they reproduce. We can also make Hoyas by taking cuttings. Their water needs are a lot higher when they are blooming than when they are just growing. Their nutrient levels requirements are much higher when they are blooming as opposed to when they are just growing. All right, let's look at the roots before we get any further, because I've already knocked off about 15 leaves. So we have mush in here in the reservoir. Okay, it looks like we got a separation. We've got 2 stems. And this stem is, I will show it to you in a second. This is the exact reason why I want to get these out of pond. The exact reason I want to get these out of pond. See this right here? See this muck and mud in here? But this is all root that has formed in pond. This is just mush. And I am, as you can see, I am slowly breaking it out, and roots just break off in it. These are dead roots in here. In this is dead. But see, there should be no reason that there is dirt in there, because that is not a dirt. That's never had dirt in it. Wash that out a little. When you have roots like this, you have roots like this, which are still, and if you still see, they still have all the hairy stems. So this is all gone. This is 100% trash roots. There are, even the roots that are left have hair filaments, the filaments of the roots inside. So I'm going to cut this whole thing back. And then we're going to look at this one right here, which has a lot of, which if you see here, there's a lot of meshy, dark roots. In my opinion, those roots never do good. So I'm going to cut those out and see what's left. I may not even have to cut those out, to be honest with you. They're just pulling out as I'm getting rid of the pond. So let's see what we got. We got bunches of hair filaments. So this is what we got. If you can see, there are hair filaments sticking out. These roots are no good. So we're going to reroot this whole thing again. It's really for the best, especially in a plant that's been limping along for a long time. It's best to just restart everything. But we're not going to just restart it. We're going to give it a little bit of a glow up. We're going to put it in soil instead of in pond. We're going to cut these up because there is something wrong with these petioles. These petioles are just popping these leaves right off. Back to our subject, which is Hoyas and watering. Now, the thing to keep in mind is, even though Hoyas grow in the wild in mostly high humidity, well, I wouldn't say high light all the time, but higher light conditions, you can really acclimate them to any condition in your home. You don't have to keep the Hoyas in high humidity. That's not a requirement. I personally do have some cabinets, as you can see behind me. And that's because I do like to try and grow out my plants as fast as I can to give them a chance at growing big and flowering and growing as fast as they can. It's not something that's necessary. So what I'm going to do is right now is I am just taking cuttings from the plant that's left. So I'm going to do that and speed this part up because I also think my battery's about ready to go dead. So I better do this fast.
Should have stayed. Were the signs I ignored? Can I help you not to hurt anymore? We saw brilliance when the world was asleep.
Okay, I think I've got all the plant part I can get. So my battery's running dead, so I'm going to go ahead and change my battery and get this cleaned up, and I'll be right back. What we were talking about before I did my little break up these Mathilde cuttings was I talked about how Hoyas, although they live in a very temperate climate, you can acclimate them to your climate. The thing you need to be careful about when acclimating your plants to your climate, be it a cooler climate, be it a drier climate, or anything like that, is you have to consider the effects it has on watering your plant. And what I mean by that is you can take a plant that has a certain level of watering requirement. And what I'm doing right now, in case you're wondering, is I am spraying this with Pure Crop 1, if it wants to turn off. Whoop. I'm spraying it with Pure Crop 1 as just kind of a pest preventative. I'm testing it out. There is a foliar application you can do with Pure Crop 1, so I'm trying that to see if I notice a difference with my plant. You need to be careful with watering because the temperature has an effect on watering. The humidity has an effect on watering, and what I mean by that is overwatering or underwatering. If you have a plant that lives in a warm temperate climate, for example, and you you want to acclimate it to your drier climate, you need to water that plant more because it needs to have more water to uptake to compensate for environmental loss through transpiration. The plant will be perspiring per se. Think of it, like you sweat when it's hotter out. Plants, when it's drier out, plants need to, balance out the homeostasis per se. So that's what you need to do. So you need to be careful and not underwater your plants, or you will get some drying. You will get some possibly some root rot. We will talk about this a little bit later, but the way you water can have a impact. For watering, for example, you may have heard of the taco test. Please do not use the taco test to water your plants, or to water your Hoya specifically. A Hoya has a thick succulent leaf. For example, I'll show you this. This Mathilde has a thick succulent leaf. If you try to, this is a thick leaf. A taco test says when it bends, it's time to water. But you know, this is a new leaf. That's why it bends. But if you have, say, a naturally mature leaf that doesn't bend, and if you would say wait until this rock hard thick cardboard leaf bends, then what you're actually doing is you're underwatering that plant to such a severe level that you are causing cellular damage to that plant. That's not good. You do not want to do that just to water your plant, because what you will do is you will put in a perpetual cycle of damage, cell damage to the plant. Too much underwatering followed by a period of watering. And that's not to say that you can't, you know, dry and drench your plant, because I will talk about that later. That's a very good watering method. But you just need to be careful when you water your plants. There are factors that are considered when you are making up your soil mixture and your pot that you're going to put it in. Your soil makeup, or your soil composition, is very important. Right now, I'm putting this plant in pond, which is not even technically a soil, but it is a substrate. Every type of substrate mixture you choose has a feature of watering. How you water affects how the plant grows. You need to know what your substrate is going to require and match that up to what your plant is going to need. I am choosing this pond for propagating these Hoya cuttings because this plant I know does well in pond. And I know that I can leave this plant in this pond with a reservoir and it will root nicely. The trick is getting the cuttings in here without ripping off all those leaves, because as we remember just a few minutes ago, these leaves like to pop off. So that is the trick. But a soil mixture is very important. For my Hoyas, because I live in a dry environment, I use a mixture of cocoa husk. Sometimes I throw in some bark chips. Most of the time I do not, because those take too much moisture to wet when I'm watering, and so I don't feel that they have a chance to retain the level of moisture I need. You can actually tailor your substrate to match your watering technique. If you water a little too much, as I say, if you love your plants a little too much, you can use a soil mixture that has a lot of cocoa peat, because that's a pretty pretty dry mixture that dries out pretty fast. You can use a mixture without a lot of soil. Like if you have a airy mix or a chunky mix, don't put a lot of soil in it. Just put enough just enough to keep it together. That's kind of what I do. Is I have basically just enough soil in my soil to keep it together. My soil also has chunky perlite. You'll see my soil when I pot up my other plants. If you underwater your Hoya, you will notice a few things. Mainly what you will notice is over time, you will notice yellowing leaves. You will notice leaves dropping off the plant. They can only get extra dry one too many times. And if you are, if you listen to the philosophy that says dry your Hoyas out for like 3 weeks, or don't dry them, like forget about them and then water them, or some nonsense like that, or like I forgot about my Hoya for 3-4 weeks before I watered it. Don't do that. These are Hoyas. I mean, these are tropical plants. They come from rainforests where it waters almost every day. Just because they have thick leaves does not mean they should not be watered, uh, and watered regularly. So if you do not water regularly, and try to stretch it out for several weeks between waterings, what will happen is, the leaf will become weak. The structures of the plant wall, of the cell wall of the leaf, will become weak, and they will eventually just turn yellow and not be able to hold on to any moisture anymore. And they will weaken, they will yellow, and they will fall off. And then there will be no more leaf. So that's something that you want to try to avoid if you can. You know, I will not say that I am the perfect water, that I water every time that I'm supposed to. But you know, if you get it down as a habit and water, at least semi-regularly when the plant is dry, but not like, desert dry, you'll probably have more success.
There are things that we can have but can't keep. If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs out? If a moment is all we are, or quicker, quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do. The reminders pull the floor from your feet. In the kitchen, one more chair than you need.
Okay, remind me why I should never talk about something that's complicated when I'm trying to do something that's complicated. So this is my Mathilde. This is just the regular one. This is not the Mathilde Splash or anything. It had some serious issues. It probably literally dropped off probably about 25 leaves. It had some serious issues. Hopefully, rerooting it directly from starting all over again will hopefully help it. And I can mark this off my list of things to do. And we can go on to number 2. And hopefully this I will be able to talk a little more. So this is the Mathilde. Now we're going to talk about the importance. I'm going to edit out when I talked about the soil the last time. Or maybe not. But we're going to talk about soil this time because now I'm actually going to work with my soil mixture. And this right here is my soil mixture. This is cocoa husk, a little bit of bark, chunky perlite, a little bit of horticultural charcoal, and just a little bit of soil, just enough to hold it all together. I added some soil to it last night because it was getting a little dry. So that's what we have now. So this mix is good for self-watering pots and for small pots that I can have. I can put reservoirs, little reservoir cups on the bottom like this. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to unpot this veitchii, and we're going to put that in a soil mixture because this, I know the roots are totally rotted. Oh my gosh, that is so disgusting. I got this in this pot, so I can't say that I did this myself. So thankfully it's still got some healthy roots. But we're going to pot it in a clear pot that's going to sit on here. It's going to go in here. It's going to have a little bit of water in here, and it's going to be in a chunky mix. So while I'm going ahead and getting my scissor ready to cut, we're going to go ahead and talk again, just to clarify, that you can use your soil mix. You can change your soil mix basically and adjust it to your living conditions. If you live in a climate like I do, a dry climate, then you can put soil in your mixture because it won't be a bad thing to have something that retains moisture. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, if you live in a condition, say Florida, you probably would want to put cocoa peat in it instead. That would be up to you, but that would be what I would do. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just taking these old roots, this old damaged stuff. Gonna cut this leaf where the damaged part is. This is actually not too bad of a condition, considering how bad the growing condition was. But it's important, you don't want your stuff, your stuff. you don't want your substrate mix to be too drying. You don't want it to dry out in a day or two, and you don't want it to be something that stays wet too long. You want it to be something that stays. I like it so that if it stays wet for about a week. That's the sweet spot I like my mixes to be. That's what I aim for. Now, does that mean that I only water my plants once a week, or that my plants only need water once a week? No. That just means that that's the that's the range where I like to, that's the aim I like to get my plants to be at. See, I could probably take that down a little further. Let me do that. And I probably could get some of the soil out. So let me kind of shake that soil out a little more. Okay, let's try that again. Okay, there we go. Much better. Okay, so now we get to where we talk about Hoyas and humidity. Humidity is an important part of watering because humidity also influences how wet a plant will be or how dry a plant will be, the substrate. And by the way, this is my Anthurium veitchii, which has no official interaction with the Hoya, but it needed to be done. And so we got it done today. Next Hoya will be my, what I think is my endauensis, unless I misunderstood. This has been in pond forever. I like to move it to something else. Let's check these roots. See how the roots are. Roots seem to be decent. Roots seem to be good. Let's show you the roots. The roots are nice and good. Here's the trick. Do I want to take these roots out of pond and put them in? Because last time I did that, they kind of died on me. But we shall try. So, you know, when you have a Hoya and your room humidity is say 60%, you're not going to need to water your Hoyas as much as say if your Hoyas were in say 20%. So that's something to keep in mind. Light has an influence on Hoyas and their watering. The more light there is, the faster and more frequently you will need to water. You know, so that's always something to keep in mind. Okay, here I believe is my endauensis. We'll see how this goes. I am really hoping that this doesn't die on me again, because the last time I tried to put it in something other than a teacup of pond, it crapped out on me. Next is this lacunosa, and this is in very fine, looks like cocoa peat. Looks like it's in cocoa peat. So we talked about lighting. And you know, actually for this, I'm not even going to break this up really. I'm just going to drop it in the middle of the pot with this, and I'm going to make it more of a, I'm going to make sure there's more soil in this. And I'm gonna, do I want this? I think I want this. Okay, but there's other conditions that influence watering too. There is beyond room humidity and lighting. There's also um, the season. Um, when the seasons change, um, and fall comes, and there is less light in during the day, um, Hoyas need less watering. Um, when the spring comes, they need more. So that is something to keep in mind. Um, there are all sorts of environmental factors to watering. Um, you know, if you have a young plant as opposed to a mature plant, a young plant will tend to need a little bit less moisture than a mature plant will, because that mature plant is doing more at the mature plant is doing more growth, more photosynthesizing, is supporting more leaves.
Just 'cause you can't see it doesn't mean.
All right, there we go. And there is our lacunosa leopard skin. Very nice. I like that. I think that one turned out pretty good. Got one leaf backwards, but hey, turned out pretty good. The last part we're going to talk about today is assessing soil moisture and actually, the mechanics of watering, which I don't think that we will probably need to do too much talking on the mechanics of watering, because I think we all know pretty much everything I want to say. I just want to touch on one little, that one broke, one little subject real fast. So, everybody knows about checking moisture, but for those of you, maybe there's a person out there who has never checked moisture before. So, what are we talking about checking moisture? There's a couple ways you do it. You do it by visual. You look at it and you say, "Gee, that soil looks wet." Okay, well, that's one way you could do it, but that's not always the most efficient way. The way I do it is, God's moisture detector, the finger test. And that is literally sticking your finger in until the first or second digit and seeing how moist or how dry your plant is. Um, in general, if I stick my index finger into a plant, a Hoya, and it is dry until the first digit, I consider that plant damp, and I would water it if that is a plant that needs to stay damp at all times, because that Hoya has dried out a little bit, but it's still inside the plant is still moist. So I do that. Now, if the plant is dry until the second digit, until the second knuckle, which would be 2 inches down, I would consider that plant dry, and I would water it for the most part, unless it needs to be very dry. And then I would wait until it goes down to the third digit, or until I can reach into the middle of the plant pot. Holy cow, this is in LECA. I didn't even know I had a plant in LECA anymore. Wow, this should be interesting. Oh yeah, it is interesting. Huh. I didn't even know I had a plant in LECA anymore. Well, we'll have to get these roots separated. There's just a little bit of rot, just a little bit of root rot. Some gigantic thick roots though. Holy, look at that root. Look how thick that root is. That root is gigantic. I've never seen such a thick root. And it wraps all the way around the pot. Oh no, that's a stem wrapped all the way around the pot with a peduncle. There is a peduncle inside the pot. Okay, well, we're going to have to cut the pot. There's more than one peduncle inside the pot. Okay, well, let's cut the pot. I hate cutting the pot, but let's see what we got. Oh, let's see. And of course, and there's a leaf here too. So, beyond the finger test, there are moisture meters, and a lot of people rely on them. And if you can rely on a moisture meter to help you learn when you need to water, then that's great. Go ahead and use the moisture meter. The thing to keep in mind, though, is that a moisture meter cannot detect accurately when you have a chunky mix. So if you have pieces of bark or pieces of perlite or pieces of anything in your pot, when the moisture meter hits that, it's not going to be able to register a moisture level for that. So you'll need to keep that in mind.
Isn't there? If they say, who cares if one more light goes out in the sky of a million stars? It flickers, flickers. Who cares when someone's time runs?
Once you have your finger test or your moisture meter or your sight or whatever you use to gather your intelligence to find out it's time to water, you need to have your official way of watering. You need to know how to water. And, most people think it's really simple, but in fact, you need to have an established way of water, a way that you personally want to water, and a way that you're going to water, so that your Hoya gets used to that. The way I tend to water is a dunk and is a dry and dunk. It's a method in which I let the plant dry out, and then I add water to its reservoir, or I soak the plant so that it gets full of water, because that kind of emulates how it gets watered in nature. In nature, it is an epiphyte for the most part. So it is on a tree or a rock or a branch. Hold on. I need to change my battery. Okay, so what I was saying before I had to cut the camera was that, because Hoyas are epiphytes, in nature, what happens is they are on trees exposed, and they have to wait for water to fall down on them. And then after that, they are soaked. And then after they are soaked, they dry out again. So it's a soak and dry kind of a watering. So I like to emulate that in nature, or I like to emulate that in my home. So I like to let their reservoirs dry out, and then I will go ahead and soak them again, and then let them dry out. So I use a soak and dry. Some people like to gently water their plants, and what that is when you go ahead and you will lightly water your plants at all time, keeping them lightly damp. Some people like to do that. It's called. Some people might also like to say they keep their plants evenly watered. You can do that. Uh, the thing is when you choose a watering type, you need to make sure that you avoid root rot in your plants, because Hoyas are very susceptible to root rot. And Hoyas are susceptible to two kinds of root rot. Hoyas are susceptible to dry rot and traditional rot. Most people know about the traditional root rot, in which you have a plant and you do exactly what looked like in my anthurium, and you have this nasty wet soil. But dry rot is a little different. Dry rot is when you have the Hoya and you let it dry out for too long, and then after so long, you finally water the plant, but unfortunately, it's too little too late, or sometimes too much too late, and the Hoya ends up drowning. And you take those roots that were very dry, and then you water them, and you create all this moisture on these roots that were dry, and you just turn them into mush. So that's what dry rot is. And trust me, it can raise just as much havoc, if not more, than traditional root rot. Because then you don't know why you think your Hoya is fine, but it's not. You say, well, I just watered it, it should be fine. It shouldn't be dry rot. It shouldn't be root rot. My Hoya is nicely watered, but nope, it's root rot. You just aren't familiar with this kind of root rot, because philodendrons and anthuriums don't exactly have this kind of root rot. So just practice, if you want to keep your Hoyas evenly damp, then try that.
Time runs out if I'm more.
This Mathilde, boy, both of these Mathildes were hard to trellis. That's for sure.
Is all we are, or quicker. Who cares if one more light goes out? Well, I do.
Sorry, I have this song stuck in my head, and I am sitting here in my brain, singing this same lyric over and over and over again, and I'm realizing I'm not talking on my video. So this is my Mathilde Splash after repotting it back up. I think it's going to be a lot happier like this. Okay, so that's my video for today. I hope you enjoyed seeing me repot some plants as well as talk about Hoya watering information. I know that it might be a little basic, but I hope that even the most advanced Hoya growers would pick up on maybe just one little bit of information. I hope that you were able to pick up on something at least through the video, or at least have a little fun while watching this. If you have any questions or would like to include anything, please put it in the comment section below. I'm so glad that you stayed and watched through till the end. If you have any comments, please let me know. And until next time, I'll see you then. Thanks so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful day. Bye.